One of the most subtle forms of relational frustration isn't necessarily conflict, it's incompletion. It's the experience of starting a sentence and realizing that someone else has already decided how it's going to end. Over time, these unfinished moments accumulate and quietly change how we show up in conversation. This dynamic is more influential in relationships than most people realize, and it's happening without awareness. Well, welcome to Mars Venus Coaching. I am your gender intelligence coach, Clay Smith. In today's episode, we're going to be exploring how interruption quietly undermines connection, why it happens so often between well-intentioned partners. We will also look at how replacing it with active listening can restore emotional safety and closeness. You'll gain some clarity on the hidden cost of interrupting, learn some practical tools that can shift this pattern, and lastly, you'll be able to walk away with one simple challenge to improve your communication, both with your significant other, at home with your kids, and at work. So, first of all, let's begin by taking a look at what interruption actually is and how it so often goes unnoticed in everyday conversations. The habit of interrupting is rarely about disrespect. More often, it's driven by urgency, the fear of forgetting a thought, the desire to be understood quickly, the impulse to clarify before emotions escalate. In relationships, interruption usually comes from a place of engagement, not indifference. Many couples interrupt without even realizing it, disguising their behavior as a courtesy. Phrases like, "Oh, I know what you're going to say," or "let me add one more thing," or the proverbial, "yes, but." These interruptions are commonly paired with predicting the next thought or finishing the other person's sentence. Even when expressed kindly, these moments subtly redirect awareness and attention from the speaker while fracturing the listening process. It's important to note that speed doesn't soften the interruption, and good intentions don't neutralize its impact. Couples interrupt one another for reasons that are just rarely superficial. Interruption is typically a symptom of deeper relational dynamics rather than just a lapse of manners. Now, one common cause of interruption is emotional activation. When emotions rise, the nervous system prioritizes expression over reception, making it difficult to remain receptive while another person is speaking. Many couples interrupt because they fear losing a thought. This is often reflected as anxiety rather than dominance, especially in a fast-paced or emotionally charged conversation. Another driver of interruption is accumulated resentment. You see, when prior conversations have felt unresolved, partners may interrupt to force their unmet needs back into the dialogue. Some couples interrupt because of limiting emotional space. When both partners feel unheard, conversations shift from mutual understanding to parallel monologues. They're talking at one another instead of with one another. Habit also plays a major role. If interruption has been normalized in the relationship, it can become an unconscious communication style rather than a deliberate choice. Cultural and family orientation also further reinforce this behavior. Many people just grow up in environments where speaking over one another was the standard. Now, from a gender intelligence perspective, men frequently interrupt out of a problem-solving orientation. When a solution appears obvious, there's that impulse to rush in quickly towards that resolution, sometimes at the expense of fully listening to the emotional context. In contrast, women are more likely to interrupt when emotional attunement feels threatened. Her interruption is often an attempt to preserve that connection, clarify intention, or prevent perceived misunderstandings. At its core, interruption often signals a lack of psychological safety. When couples don't trust that they will be fully heard, they attempt to secure airtime prematurely. Understanding why interruption occurs allows couples to examine the root of the issue rather than just policing their behavior. When safety, pacing, and mutual trust are restored, interruption naturally diminishes. Now, it's important to remember that while intention behind interrupting may seem harmless, its impact certainly is not. When someone is interrupted, even subtly, the unspoken message may sound something like, "My thought is more important than yours," or "I'm already ahead of you," or "You don't need to finish, I got it." Whether that message is intended or not, it registers emotionally. One of the earliest consequences is the erosion of that psychological safety in the relationship. When partners cannot reliably complete a thought, they begin to self-edit, shorten their expression, or withdraw altogether. Over time, this leads to emotional constriction. Now, these unspoken concerns don't disappear. They calcify into internal narratives that shape the distance that grows between them, that fuels that resentment flow, that creates mistrust. Interruption also distorts perception. Couples may begin to view one another as dismissive, controlling, or emotionally unavailable when neither intends to be. As this cycle persists, conversations lose their depth. Dialogue becomes transactional rather than exploratory, primarily focused on solutions over understanding one another. For many men, chronic interruption reinforces disengagement or shutdown. When problem solving efforts are just completely overridden, withdrawal may feel safer than continued participation. For many women, persistent interruption often intensifies that emotional urgency. Feeling repeatedly cut off can heighten expression, increase repetition, or escalate tone in an effort to be heard. Oftentimes, the couples I work with say, "The problems keep coming up. We talk about the same thing over and over again." I wonder if interruption has a role to play in unresolved conflict. These divergent responses create a reinforcing loop. One partner speaks more forcibly to gain that space, while the other retreats into avoid friction. Relational trust silently deteriorates in this environment. Partners stop expecting attunement and instead prepare for defensiveness. Now, over time, intimacy will suffer. See, emotional closeness requires patience, curiosity, and the assurance that one's inner experience matters. When interruption dominates conversation, connection becomes fragile. What is lost isn't just a conversation, but a sense of being emotionally accompanied by your partner. Now, the first side of the solution to interrupting belongs to the one who interrupts. Begin by turning your attention inward. Notice whether you interrupt as a matter of habit rather than intention. Pay attention to moments when you're predicting what your partner is going to say and complete their sentence before they have a chance to. Observe whether you redirect conversations at work, cut people off mid-story, or move quickly towards that solution instead of allowing experiences to unfold. This tendency often masquerades as efficiency or involvement, but in reality, it frequently reflects impatience with process rather than respect for perspective. Awareness alone is remarkably curative in this dynamic. When interruption is seen clearly, it loses much of its unconscious momentum. If you can find that you're the one interrupting, I challenge you to a detox, which I'll explain momentarily. But the second side of the solution to interrupting belongs to the one who is interrupted. You see, relational health requires the ability to calmly reclaim space without defensiveness, blame, escalation, or withdrawal. Clear statements such as, let me finish this thought, then I want to hear your response. Or, hold on just for a moment, let me land this. Or, can I complete this thought and then we can switch directions? Or my favorite, it's short and sweet, which is, hold that thought. Using defensive free phrases when you're interrupted preserves the integrity of the conversation without escalating the tension. It allows you to reclaim space while signaling that connection matters more than control. Now, just as important of resisting the urge to interrupt your partner for interrupting you. When interrupted, a very counterintuitive strategy is to allow them to finish their sentence. Then, calmly restate your point using one of those phrases. This is going to model the very patience and respect that you're asking for, while preventing the interaction from devolving into mutual disruption. These statements work because they do three things simultaneously. They're going to assert presence, clarify intention, and invite dialogue without conflict. Used consistently and calmly, they retrain the rhythm of the conversation. Over time, this helps shift interruption from mutual pacing and respect. Now, for many men, practicing patience with another person's emotional pacing builds trust more effectively than just rapid problem solving. And ladies, trusting that space can be reclaimed without intensifying that expression preserves dignity and safety. When both partners participate in this process, conversation slowly, naturally improves. Listening becomes more collaborative rather than competitive. Interruption diminishes not through force, but through consciousness. And as awareness increases, respect will naturally follow. Conversation becomes to feel restorative rather than exhausting. Habits don't get erased, they get replaced. If interruption is removed without being replaced, a conversational vacuum essentially forms. Now, healthy conversation requires a constructive alternative, not necessarily an absence of a bad habit. The opposite of interrupting isn't silence, it's active listening. Active listening is the disciplined practice of remaining present with another person's internal process while they finish their thought or their thought reaches completion. It communicates respect, safety, and authentic interest without requiring immediate response from you. In practice, active listening sounds more restrained than reactive. It includes some brief acknowledgments such as, I hear you. That makes sense. Go on. Offered without redirecting the conversation. Active listening also involves allowing pauses to exist. Moments of silence give the speaker space to access deeper layers of thought that would otherwise remain unspoken. Now, for many men, active listening requires resisting the urge to solve or optimize too quickly. The value lies not just in finding a solution or fixing the issue, but in allowing the full emotional context to be expressed. If you'd like a deeper understanding of how active listening can transform that connection, particularly in supporting a woman if she's undergoing stress and just needs that listening ear, I challenge you to check out one of my earlier episodes on the Venus Talk. In that video, we talk about the brain chemistry behind active listening, how cortisol levels are lowered through a woman feeling heard and understood. Go check that out. Now, for many women, active listening involves trusting that presence itself sustains connection. Or, said another way, understanding doesn't always constantly require verbal engagement to remain intact. Nonverbal cues also play a critical role in active listening. Things like eye contact, stillness, open posture, these all signal sometimes more powerfully than words. Active listening often concludes with reflection rather than a rebuttal, using statements like, "What I'm hearing you say is," or "sounds like that mattered to you because." These demonstrate comprehension over a candid response. Active listening slows conversations without stalling the connection. Depth replaces urgency, and understanding becomes collaborative rather than competitive. Over time, this transforms communication from a struggle for airtime into a shared exploration. Active listening becomes not just a skill, but a relational posture that strengthens that trust and intimacy. Now, insight alone becomes more meaningful and powerful when it is applied. I invite you to put this awareness into practice through participating in a 7-day interruption detox. For the next week, silently commit to observing your own communication patterns with intention. Notice whether you complete someone else's sentence. Redirect the conversation prematurely. Move towards solutions before fully being able to hear what's going on. Pay attention, not to just what your partner is saying, but in all contexts. Observe how you interact with your colleagues at work, how you engage with your children, and how you are quick to jump to conclusions instead of allowing others to fully articulate their perspective. This week is not about perfection or opportunities for self-criticism. It's about cultivating awareness and choosing presence over reflex. During these 7 days, replace interrupting with active listening. Allow for more pauses. Let stories unfold. Trust that understanding deepens when people are given the gift to sometimes just think out loud. And at the end of the week, take a step back and reflect on what shifted. Even subtle changes in communication can produce noticeable differences in emotional tone and relational ease. You may ask yourself the following questions. Did my conversations feel more calmer or less tense this week? Did the people I speak with seem more open, relaxed, or engaged? Did my partner appear to feel more understood or approach me less defensively? Did my children respond with a little bit more connection or willingness to share? Did collaboration at work feel clearer or more aligned? Did I feel less of an urgency to control the outcome of the conversation? Did I notice moments where patience led to deeper insight? And finally, consider how it felt internally to listen without interruption. Was there a bit of discomfort in those pauses, or relief, or maybe a greater sense of connection? You may find that reducing interruption did more than just improve your communication. It likely repaired a sense of emotional safety that allows relationships to function with greater harmony and trust. And if nothing else, let this week of an experiment be a gift. Giving another person the gift of fully being heard and noticing what that invites back into your relationship is mutually beneficial. So, as you move through this 7-day detox, your awareness will naturally sharpen. Your brain's reticular activating system will begin filtering for moments of interruption, making those patterns more visible that once operated automatically. And see, because your partner is your mirror, this heightened awareness will draw attention to when your partner interrupts you. Now, this is not a time to invite a story lesson or get reactive, but an opportunity to respond with patience, curiosity, and connection for when they interrupt you. As you work to interrupt less, practice responding rather than counter interrupting. Model the presence that you're cultivating and allow your behavior to become an invitation for your partner to learn from. Communicating with my 5-year-old has quietly reshaped how I think about interruption. He is energetic, quick-minded, and is deeply eager to participate in whatever is going on. And as his language is developing, his brain is moving quickly in conversation. He often predicts what's coming next and says it out loud before anyone else has a chance to finish a thought. If we're going to talk about our schedule for the afternoon, we begin with the first step, but mentally he's already sprinting towards steps 2 through 5. He fills he fills in the gaps. He's anticipating the outcomes. He's interrupting with enthusiasm rather than with intention. And listen, I'm going to be honest, it can be emotionally draining being repeatedly cut off, even by a child that you adore. It still creates a subtle sense of strain. The conversation feels fragmented and presence begins to slip. You have a one sentence question that you ask, but the amount of times is you're interrupted, you have to continue to repeat that question until the answer arrives. What's humbling, though, is recognizing why it's happening. I don't think he's being purposely disrespectful. He's learning sequencing and patience and how to hold back and wait for that sentence or thought or story to unfold. His nervous system is still learning how to listen without rushing ahead. And that reality, that realization landed somewhere deeply for me. Because when adults interrupt, it often comes from that same space. Our language is more sophisticated, but that impulse is familiar. We anticipate, we assume, we rush to that conclusion, and we speak before the other person's experience has fully landed. Watching my son has reminded me that listening isn't always a given. It's a skill that we can develop, refine, and sometimes have to relearn. That awareness has changed how I show up. Not just with Theo, but with my wife, with my clients, with the people that I come in contact with. So as you move into this 7-day interruption detox, I invite you to hold that same level of curiosity with yourself. Notice where your brain races ahead. Notice where impatience wants to replace that presence. Again, this isn't about perfection. It's about creating enough space for thoughts to finish, for people to feel accompanied rather than rushed. Sometimes the most meaningful shift in our relationships come from just simply deciding to be present with that other person. Listening is something we all continue to learn. Whether you're parenting, partnering, or leading, presence deepens with practice. And if this episode offered you some clarity or perspective, I would appreciate you hitting that like button. Feel free to subscribe to my channel on a monthly basis. I put out some content on how to stay connected and improve communication. We offer impactful relationship tools to better our relationships. So let's stay connected by choosing presence over interruption and curiosity over solutions.